And rare red weather warnings issued for parts of the UK and Ireland as a powerful storm hits the region with record wind speeds. Over 500,000 homes and businesses are without power, and hundreds of flights have been cancelled. And the junta-led allies Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger announced their own common passport will come into effect from the 29th of January, the date of their departure from the regional bloc ECOWAS. Hello and welcome. Let's take a look at our top story. Is Turkey becoming Africa's mediator? After successfully resolving a dispute between neighbours Ethiopia and Somalia, it wants to mediate between neighbours Rwanda and the DRC, who are locked in political confrontation fueled by an insurgency near their borders. Now, Rwanda's President Paul Kagame met with his Turkish counterpart Recep Tayyip Erdogan as he made an official visit to Ankara 2 days ago. It is the first such visit by a Rwandan head of state to Turkey. During the talks, Erdogan pitched the offer of playing a peacemaker. He said his country is ready to provide any support needed to resolve the rift between the two nations. The Democratic Republic of Congo accuses Rwanda of backing the M23 rebels, who have waged an insurgency in the country's east for years. They are fighting to take control of the mineral-rich North Kivu province, which borders Rwanda. The rebels have advanced in the province, reaching near the provincial capital of Goma. The crisis has forced people to leave their homes as the fall of Goma seems near. Thousands are fleeing the DRC on overcrowded boats, while the hospitals in the area have been overwhelmed as casualties from the fighting continues to grow. So far, the mediation efforts between both sides were led by Angola. However, the efforts have not been successful. The talks between the two nations were called off last month, and the situation on the ground is worsening. The hopes for peace in the region were fading day by day. But enter Erdogan. Erdogan has pitched his model of diplomacy that has worked in Africa. Rwanda's president has hailed the diplomatic efforts of Turkey to help broker peace between Horn of Africa neighbours Ethiopia and Somalia. The two were locked in a year-long dispute over a port deal Addis Ababa had signed with Somalia's breakaway region, Somaliland. The deal was to access Somaliland's port and coastline in exchange for recognizing the territory as an independent nation. Turkey, which is a close ally of Somalia, led the talks between the two nations, leading them to sign the Ankara Declaration last month. Both the sides agreed to resolve the differences and to leave behind contentious issues. The deal emerged as a major win for Erdogan. But that's not it. Earlier, Erdogan also pitched to resolve disputes between Sudan and the UAE. The Sudan army accuses the UAE of backing the rival paramilitary force, the RSF, which has been fighting a brutal civil war with the army for almost 2 years. Sudan Army Chief positively received the idea. Now Ankara wants to resolve the years-long rift between the DRC and Rwanda. So while major players that Russia, the United States and China are indulging in military and economic activity in Africa to increase their influence, Turkey is choosing the path of peacemaking. Turkish diplomacy could play a major role in improving its global standing. But peacemaking is not the only way Ankara is increasing its footprint in Africa. In recent years, it has sold attack drones to several African nations, including Chad, Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. It has signed oil exploration deals with countries like Somalia and Senegal. It has free trade agreements with countries like Tunisia, Egypt, Morocco, and Mauritius. Turkey has invested heavily across Africa in recent years. Turkey's direct investments were over $7 billion last year, while total trade surpassed $35 billion. Turkey also has good ties with both Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of Congo. So could there be another win for Turkish diplomacy in Africa? For more on this, we have with us Vincent Recep, who is the head of political risk for Africa at the Control Risks, and he is joining us live from London. Thank you for being with us.
Thanks for having me, Alison.
Now, given Turkey's recent success in mediating the dispute between Ethiopia and Somalia, what unique approach or strategy does Turkey bring to conflict resolution that could be effective in addressing the tensions between the DRC and Rwanda?
Thanks, Alison. Well, so first, I think we should say this is new territory for Turkey. The Turkish mediation offer is unprecedented for this region, and throughout the history of conflict in the Great Lakes region, this is the first time that we've seen Turkey try to play a key role as a mediator. And it does come with some credibility, mostly from the success of the talks between Ethiopia and Somalia, as you alluded to, but also from the fact that it does bring economic heft as a leading investor in the two countries. So in Rwanda, it accounts for about 15% of total foreign investment. In Congo, it's also emerged as a prominent investor. We've seen, for example, Turkish firms build an economic and trade center in Kinshasa just recently. And so there is a combination of personal involvement by President Erdogan. We know that he was himself instrumental to the talks between Ethiopia and Somalia, the economic backing, and also the fairly benign image that the Turkish diplomacy benefits in this part of Africa. But I think for this particular conflict, it also comes at an extremely difficult time. And as you reported, as we speak, the M23, the rebel group, is advancing on Goma, has made rapid progress. So the time isn't exactly ripe for mediation, or at least for a deep mediation process that would look at addressing the underlying causes of the conflict.
And Vincent, on that, just how significant is the role of international mediators like Turkey in resolving these long-standing conflicts, such as the DRC's accusations against Rwanda over this exact thing, the M23 rebel support, especially when the regional efforts have faced challenges?
Yeah, so international mediators clearly have a major role to play in this dispute. Congo has continually argued that this is not a domestic issue between the government and a rebel group, but that it is very much a bilateral conflict between itself and Rwanda that needs to be discussed and settled between the two governments with the help of mediators. And so that's why we've seen various mediation tracks, first in Nairobi, Kenya, then lately last year in Angola, and now the involvement of Turkey trying to add its own solution to the equation after the stalling of the talks in Angola. Behind the scenes, we've also seen other international players play a role, and most notably the US, up until last year, was being a very important mediator behind the scenes in avoiding escalation between the two parties. And we know that US discrete intervention was very important at, for example, deconfliction between the Rwandan and DRC armies in the region. So there's definitely a space for international support to the mediation. At the same time, there's also a risk that the more parties get involved in the talks, the more different tracks of mediation you have, and that also can become an obstacle to an effective resolution if too many players get involved without coherence between these different tracks. That's already something we saw as a bit of a problem between the Kenya track and the Angola track. And Turkey is going to have to pay attention, to not contribute to that problem with its own offer of mediation now.
Right, Vincent, thank you very much for being with us on Firstpost Africa and for your valued insights and analysis on the latest on Turkey's mediation efforts.
Thank you very much, Alison.
Shifting focus to Kenya now, where it seems President William Ruto has landed in an embarrassing situation. In an unusual turn of events, some very high-profile appointees have turned down the offer to serve in his government. Over the last few months, several key figures have declined to work for Ruto, And the positions they are refusing are not some insignificant roles. They are some very key positions in the government. For example, chairperson of the National Transport and Safety Authority, Kenya's High Commissioner to Ghana. At least 2 people have refused this position. Then there is the chair of the Kenya Animal Genetic Resource Centre, the appointment to the Nairobi Rivers Commission, the appointment to the President's Task Force on Auditing Public Debt, and also the appointment to a health task force. Despite the prestige associated with such roles, Ruto has struggled to fill them. These are some positions one would see as opportunities of a lifetime, but they have been declined due to a slew of reasons. Some have cited personal reasons, some are on maternity leave, some have simply declined after consulting with family and friends, and then some have been more vocal. Like Kenya's Law Society President, Faith Odhiambo, he declined an appointment to the Public Debt Task Force formed by Ruto, as he believed the task force is unconstitutional. Then the former MP, Victor Munyaka, declined a job to be the chairperson of the Kenya Animal Genetic Resource Centre. He cited the country's current political climate behind his decision. Kenya has been witnessing political tensions for the past few months. Things have worsened since Ruto's controversial move to raise taxes to increase revenue last year. This resulted in violent demonstrations. Public dissatisfaction has since continued to grow. In order to quell the anger, Ruto formed a broad-based government inviting opposition members to the cabinet. However, things are not going well with his new cabinet either. A key minister has publicly criticized the Ruto government over the wave of abductions in the country. Since the anti-tax protests last year, several government critics have been abducted in Kenya. Kenya's Public Service Cabinet Secretary said his son was also abducted last year, and he has alleged intelligence services' role behind it. There are reports of growing discontent within the cabinet and fears of resignations. Amidst this, a rejection of key appointments signals wider dissatisfaction among insiders. Is a crisis simmering within the Ruto administration? And moving on to some news from South Africa, where a power outage brought an international airport to a standstill. Chaos, mayhem and confusion gripped the Cape Town International Airport as power cut disrupted flight operations, leaving travellers stranded. According to reports, several flights were delayed and subsequently cancelled, while the passengers were informed about the cancellations only upon arrival. The luggage of the travellers was reportedly taken off the aircraft, as the power outage had also affected the fuel supplies. It interrupted the departure and arrival of both domestic and international flyers. The power failure was reportedly due to a damaged cable. The airport's company of South Africa, or the AXA, issued a notice and advised passengers to contact their airlines for real-time updates on their flight schedules. The company also said that their technicians were working to restore power. AXA's spokesperson said that the operations continued on generator power even after the outage. However, the airport experienced a failure on the generators as well. The airline scheduled extra flights on Thursday to assist stranded passengers. On the other hand, the travellers claim that they were left in uncertainty, with many of them continuing to be stranded as they are yet to board their rescheduled flights. While others were worried about securing refunds from airlines for their cancelled flights, the passengers alleged that even during operational hours, the airport's air conditioner didn't seem to work. The scale of disruption was grim enough for the Irish embassy in the capital of Pretoria to issue a statement informing Irish nationals about the situation. The embassy urged the travellers to contact their airlines or tour operators for guidance on their travel plans. This is not the first time a South African airport plunged into crisis. The O.R. Tambo International Airport, which serves the twin cities of Johannesburg and Pretoria, saw similar chaos last month. A refueling system failure delayed flights at Africa's busiest airport. The flight operations resumed hours later. While glitches are bound to happen at such high operations running facilities, often the flyers end up being the lone cost bearers in times of crisis. They not only end up paying loads of extra money, but also face physical and mental harassment due to the disruptions in their travel. And our last story today is from Sudan, where the army-backed government has demonetized the old currency and introduced new 500 and 1,000 Sudanese pound notes. Aimed explicitly at making the funds looted by its rival, the paramilitary RSF, as worthless, the move has only compounded the suffering of the Sudanese population. It has led to long queues outside banks and has affected trade in several parts of the country. While many are criticizing the army for the hasty decision, the move leaves millions of people out of the financial sector, especially those living in regions controlled by the RSF. We get you all the details in our next report.
This is Sudan, a country in the northeast of Africa. It has been ravaged by a deadly civil war for nearly 2 years. The army and the paramilitary RSF have turned the entire country into a battleground. And each side has been wanting an upper hand over the other. In the midst of all this, the Sudan army, which controls the government, has come out with a new strategy to undermine its enemy and bolster its war chest. It has demonetized old banknotes and introduced new banknotes of 500 and 1,000 Sudanese pounds in 7 states under its control. Launched in December, the government claims this is to protect the national economy and combat criminal counterfeiters. However, it has come at a time when the country has been grappling with the worst humanitarian crisis. The war has, with the currency losing 3/4 of its value, driven half the population into hunger. Amid such a situation, the government's move has caused even more problems for the people. It has created long queues at banks and disrupted trade in the country. In Port Sudan, which is the army's wartime capital, residents have protested over the new banknotes. Some of them have had to spend days unsuccessfully trying to get the new currency. Unlike in previous currency exchanges, to receive the new 500 and 1,000 pound notes, people have had to deposit their old notes in a bank and are only then allowed to withdraw limited amounts daily. This process has dampened sales for traders, as many people still lack the identification papers needed to open a bank account, while more lack smartphones for online transfers.
We lost our customers who buy from us in cash because of the change of the banknotes. Had it not been for our online sales on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, our sales would have been zero.
We work with fishermen. 3/4 of them do not have IDs nor modern smartphones. We used to work with cash. All of our capital is deposited in the bank. When you need cash in the future, they won't give you. You might spend a whole day to get 50,000 or 100,000 Sudanese pounds.
The army-backed government has also promoted digital banking apps such as Bangkok. But many Sudanese cannot access them because of widespread telecommunication outages. Moreover, critics also claim that the impact of the decision has been to exclude the millions who remain in the RSF-controlled territories from the financial sector and render their savings useless, in effect splitting the whole country. Currently, due to the civil war, Sudan's western Darfur region and large parts of the south are under the RSF's control. While the army controls the north and east of the country, Greater Khartoum is carved up between them. Yet, despite the extensive criticism and protests, the government has continued to back its move, claiming it to be a success.
Exchanging banknotes has various goals, one of which is making sure that the stolen money which is accumulated by some entities has no value if it enters the banking system. We aim from exchanging banknotes to push citizens towards financial inclusion and online payment systems. This obliges people to open bank accounts. Thank God, hundreds of thousands open bank accounts.
But will this success and growing bank deposits help millions of Sudanese people come out of hunger and famine, or only boost the army's war efforts? Only time will tell.
And that's it on the show for today. We will see you again at the same time on Monday. Thank you for watching, have a great weekend, and goodbye. Hello and welcome to our brand new show, Firstpost Spotlight, where we bring you the stories that matter to you from all across the world. From breaking news to the day's biggest controversies, we shed light on issues that shape our world. I'm Alison Lagrange, live from Durban, South Africa. Let's begin with the top headlines. The Kremlin says Russian President Vladimir Putin is ready to hold talks with US President Trump, but is waiting for signals from Washington. Military officials in South Korea claim Pyongyang is preparing to send more soldiers to fight the war in Ukraine along with Russian troops. The UK Met Office issues a red weather warning as Storm Irwin batters the country. Several flights and ferry crossings cancelled and schools shut. And Japan's central bank increases the cost of borrowing to its highest level in 17 years, signaling more hikes to come, spiking the yen against the dollar. And in tennis news, the great Novak Djokovic hints at retirement from the sport after withdrawing from the 2025 Australian Open semi-final against Alexander Zverev. Hello and welcome. We begin with updates from the United States, where Donald Trump's executive order ending birthright citizenship has triggered panic among the immigrants, even the legal immigrants. There has been a sudden surge in the number of